but it's sort of just gone that way, which is amazing. We've got Stephen Walker with us from OGRE Studio, the founder. Whereabouts are you, Stephen, in the country?
Well, the northeast. I'm in Gateshead at the minute because I'm in COVID lockdown. I'm in my son's bedroom. This isn't mine. Although, you know, I'm allowed to play with Lego as well. He's actually off school at the minute downstairs, but my studio is in Newcastle in a place called Heaton.
Superb. Well, while we're getting warmed up, Steve, can you take us back to, we always like to do this traditionally because I think it gives people a good idea of their backstory of who we're speaking to. Take us back to when, excuse me, design first played a role in your career, education and early stage career roles. Excuse me.
I won't go back to primary school, but I think for me, I'm from a really rough background, like a kind of, you know, it's a Irvine Welsh kind of trained spotting type background. But I think for me, it's just education. Like a lot of people, I think they met some teachers at school who opened their eyes. For me, they changed my life. I had a really good form teacher. She was just my form teacher called Miss Cormack, and I was always drawing and scribbling. I was always like the best kid in class, you know, the best drawer in the class and all that kind of stuff. So people would come over and say, "Can you draw this? Can you draw as an eye? Can you draw as a dog, an eagle, whatever?" I thought, yes, okay. She started. Well, she said there was a design club starting after schools on a Thursday or something when I was about, you know, year 7, right at the start of school. But actually, she just set one up because she seen me drawing lots, and she had me like designing shoes, trainers. I was dead into trainers at the time, designing Nike. So we could never. It was more like fetishism. We could never afford like the good trainers. To be fair, I think high techs have come on. They're like, you know, up the brand rankings. They've come on now. Back in the day, they were a mark of shame, weren't they? So I would draw like the trainers wanted, cars, stuff like that. So that was really good. But then I had some really fantastic art teachers called Jane and Tony Meacham, and I've not been able to pin them down. I've tried on LinkedIn, ex-colleagues, you know, I'm friends with teachers on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff, and they don't know where they've gone, but they really blew my mind, kind of like showing me. I remember the first time they put a David Carson book in front of me, and I was like, whoa, we could just make this on the photocopier, and it became real, you know. And I hadn't really thought about typography, glyphs, all of this kind of stuff before, and so that was the first time that I felt like it could be for me. But I actually went down the fine art route. So I did a fine art degree at university, went to Teesside University. I was dead fortunate to exhibit straight out of uni, like some work with MIMA, Middlesbrough Institute of Modern Art, part of their pre-opening program. They just had a multi-million-pound building built, and AN magazine, Artists Network magazine, featured me on the front cover of their, like, what was it, like New Blood or whatever it was back in the day. But these days you might get, you know, more commissions off the back of that because the internet and the interconnectivity of everything, but it was pretty analog back then. I'm nearly 40, 40 next year, so I'm 39 and a half now. I have to mention the half, so I'm in the kid's bedroom. Yeah, and one thing led to another. It kind of, when I finished university, I guess it was like a case of, oh shit, back to the real world. Because I'd worked since I was 12, being a paper boy, a milk lad. My dad's a window cleaner, still is. So I'd been a window cleaner, and, you know, just the same as everyone, having those jobs where we need to survive. There was never, it was always like, it was a bit hand to mouth, to be honest. But that was a really good thing because it just taught me, you know, how to hustle, if you like. And I can remember even the first time of leaving my small village, a place called Ferry Hill, which is actually an area which I discovered years later, where the drummer from Yes was from, band Penetration, who were like, you know, a bit of formative punk band at the time of the Sex Pistols, and Vaughan Oliver was from that area, and I think he might have went to grammar school either in Ferry Hill or the next village over. Anyway, I discovered him much later than when I was there, but it was kind of nice to think back, oh, maybe he was like knocking down these streets, and you watch a lot of the early Vaughan videos where he's shaved head, leather jacket, and he's taking himself very seriously. He definitely has what I would call the furry hill, that kind of like, don't fuck with me machismo, which is quite funny. So it's all just bluffing it. I was kind of it was that like imposter syndrome as well, because when I finished uni, I kind of met a girlfriend who was at Newcastle doing a fine art course in Newcastle, and got introduced to their friends, and to me they were really posh, but they weren't really posh. I was just really rough. That was just nice to sort of break a lot of my preconceptions, and just because someone speaks speaks properly for a start, or with a southern accent, it doesn't just mean that you need to doff your cap, and they're just normal people. So I think the kind of like, for me, and especially these days, I think with education, it's not so much important anymore to be the kind of content, because you can learn everything online, you can teach yourself, but it's that mixing with other students, doing projects together, doing all that DIY stuff is the exciting stuff and the real value, isn't it, in education?
Yeah, I've been a bit like in the past critical of higher education, especially for design or the creative industry, but sometimes forget that it's the social sort of side, and being away from home potentially is equally as important, isn't it, as to personal development?
Yeah, definitely. Although I didn't go away from home because I was terrified of having any or adding to the debt. So I'd travel in each day on 2 buses to get to Middlesbrough. So I'd set off at the house going to uni. I'd leave the door at 6 o'clock and I'd get to uni at about 8:45 each day, and then late back. But it was great because I'd read books on the bus, or like whilst I'm waiting for the connection in Stockton, to get back from Middlesbrough to Ferry Hill. I just had a bag full of books that I might have gotten from the library at uni, and just read so much stuff. So I think just sitting on a bus for hours on end was a fantastic thing for me. So, but you're right, it's that, it's those connections you make.
Yeah.
Finished uni, I moved up to Newcastle, just did like cafe jobs, pub jobs, back to do window cleaning and things like this. And I wasn't really doing anything what I considered creative. I was in bands and stuff like that. I think that was a good outlet, being a drummer in bands. And what happened? I just got really sick of it, but I had a bunch of creative other grads around me. So I said, I approached one person to say, let's start an art gallery. And they went, okay. And then before too long, there was 7 of us who were all co-directors in an art space in Newcastle, which we'd, done up. Basically, the back of the building was a tattoo studio, and the front was an art space, an art gallery. And that was great. We ran that for 2 years, made no money, met thousands of people, did really cool work and collaborations, developed programs, and that actually became it was like a training tool for Newcastle University Masters of Fine Art course. We had really good mentors. We got a bit of funding to see other leadership teams of other galleries, international 3 gallery in Manchester, if I've remembered rightly. I think there was the director from there. It's a long time ago. I think she was called Pauline. She was really helpful in introducing us to like Castlefield Gallery in Manchester. We went up to Glasgow, all that kind of stuff. But I got a bit sick because, it felt more like I was in academia than doing something, and it wasn't making any money. And a lot of the events we were putting on, and when I've been in bands in the past, it was that classic thing of, designing band flyers and posters, using cracked versions of Photoshop, on a computer that I actually paid with, because I had no money. I don't want to get arrested, but I saved about £3,000 whilst I was at university because I forged my bus tickets. And I worked out how to print them at home on a dodgy version of Photoshop, how they look real, getting the inks right. So that was a really interesting way about, really looking at type, really researching typography, making sure it printed right, the paper stock was right, and it passed the test, you know, because inspectors would come on and look at it and it would be like, okay, thanks. So, but that was a risk I had to take, because then that unlocked money to be able to get the bus up to Newcastle. I remember the first time I came up to Newcastle, it was like Blade Runner, just looking at these buildings, they're massive, you know. I thought 20 years ago. But yeah, sorry, I can't remember what your original question.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a first for us. We've got forgery. Admitting.
Sorry, I've learned my lesson.
Yeah. What I'm really interested in there, Stephen, is that we spoke about a week or so ago, and about the appreciation for teachers. And I think I had said something along the lines that I think that they've traditionally get seen as maybe the enemy, or there's something you fight against, especially when you get to sort of teenage, secondary school age. Mm. For you, that seems like it was then incredibly informative in an early stage, sort of mentors. In some respects, you just seem to fall across the right people to guide you. Is that how it felt at the time? Was it something that you just sort of wanted to soak up? And was the background that you came from, was that like a way to escape that, as in say, you know, to maybe better yourself or improve,
yeah, I mean, I'll go backwards, but I've done, maybe it was, I think, yeah, it probably was escapism, but it was also like an unknown, because the world that I knew was just boring and grey and miserable and full of like addiction and violence and neglect and horrible stuff, you know. So I guess maybe it was, escapism, but also it was really exciting. That was the main thing that I was taking away from it. So you could learn about these artists from all over the world. You could try and recreate their work, and I still think that's a really important thing. If you're stuck in your practice, look at some people that you love, and then just try and, I don't know. Stefan Sagmeister's done, that poster with a type all over him or something. You might not want to etch into yourself, but how could you recreate that with effects on Photoshop or whatever, or with mark making? And you really, you can learn a lot more by trying to recreate that that artwork. And that was something that I started at secondary school, and that's something that I still have now. If I get a bit stuck or if I'm feeling a bit flat whilst working on a project, I'll just spend an hour to try and do something like that. But yeah, I felt like they kind of wrapped around their arms around me and my fellow students. Unless you were being annoying in the class, obviously, then they'll just come down on you like a ton of bricks. But I think, it was a comprehensive school that was struggling. It would paint off the walls, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot better now. So I think the teachers that work there realised that, they could change potentially some kids' lives here, or at least push them through the homogenised mill of education. But it was mainly the creative teachers, but I just thought they were cool. They listened to Radio 1, not which was a bit more like Six Music back in the day. But they had like Mark and Lard on the radio when you went in the classroom, not like a silent maths class. And we had a technician called, what was he called? Stu, I think. Mike. Oh, I'm sorry if he's listening, I've got his name wrong. But he always wore a lab coat, but he had like the weird stuff. He always had like these tapes that he'd made, these mixed tapes, and he just said, hey, just have a listen to that. And I think he just taped a lot of stuff off John Peel on the night.
I think we would have gone to school at around the same sort of time. And at that point, it felt like for us there was no design, it was just art. You can only do art courses. But it felt like that it's sort of, the people that did those courses, we were all very much like-minded, even though we never really knew each other preschool. So it's people that were into independent music or bands, people that did like being a bit more experimental and sort of, the alternative side to the world. So it became a bit of for me it became a bit of a meeting place for that half an hour of the week or whatever it might have been at school, to break away from the traditions of science and history and all those things that just didn't float my boat. And that became a sort of safe space to not feel like the weirdo in the school. You weren't the sports Billy or you weren't the really clever one. You were just somebody that wanted to sort of mess about, basically.
If you were really weird, like, you'd go in there at lunch times and at break times and catch up on artwork and have a chat with a teacher whilst they're trying to have a cup of tea with the art.
I was thinking maybe more from your background that was sort of like, that was it. It is escapism, but it's also sort of maybe stepping into the world of colour, isn't it? And being surrounded by people that might not have been within your social circle as a within your
Yeah,
area?
it's just, you know, we're beings, we're animals capable of, you know, seeing a different future. And I don't think you'd be working in the creative industries if you were really happy with how everything was and you didn't want to change it. With your own situation, with that of others, you know, I'm a bit of a socialist. So I just think, you know, there's so much that needs changing. Our government, the world, capitalism, like it kind of feels like it's a golden age of opportunity for art and design. But sadly more so because everything's fucked. And people kind of, and brands and businesses plow ahead. And sometimes, you know, I just think, you know, why? You just need to stop. You know, do you want to be, with capitalism, you know, do you want to be here in the next 10,000 years time? Yes, well then stop doing what you're doing now. People, as humans, I think we need all, and even with like the way governments work, and like, you know, they have a manifesto, a plan. It's short term, isn't it? Like, why don't we have a 10,000 year plan, or a, you know, a 20,000 year plan that we all agree on? Different parties might come in, tweak it a bit, but we're roughly heading in that direction. And it kind of feels like the way technology is advancing around the world, be it benign or malicious. At some point, we're going to get to it, you know, we're going to get to the situation where technology and, you know, is at such a point, and we're in space, the countries don't get on. You know, how are we going to come to some kind of resolution if the world keeps being used up for its resources? And we're in danger of just destroying ourselves. That's kind of how it feels like with me. And I think sometimes I sit down at my desk and I have these ideas, and I just think, what's the point, you know? And I maybe don't tell my clients these thoughts, but, you know, so I just think, right, okay, we've got a brand workshop, we've got a discovery workshop that's going to last 2 weeks around such and such. But all this is going on in the back of my head. Why? And so I'm always kind of, and I think that's a privilege of working as a designer, is that you can, you know, you've got your own agenda where you can maybe suggest, you know, if they're slightly interested in, you know, making a more sustainable packaging for their food product, you'd be like, right, you know, this could be a really good leverage for the market. We're really into that. You could be the most sustainable whatever on the planet, and that could be your new selling point, and, you know, all that kind of thing. I promise you I'd go off topic quite a bit, but I think yeah, I think with me and with a lot of designers and creatives, you know, I think we're not scared of having challenging conversations with each other, with clients. And I think more and more now we just have to have a bit of hope. And I think if you're in this industry and if you're not in love with what you do, just get out. You know, I think you've got to be in love with your work. You've got to be a bit obsessive about it. But at the same time, obviously, mental health and burnout is a real thing, isn't it? So maybe you need a bit of realization of when you're knackered. Maybe that's why I've got COVID now. So I was just pushing the pedal for 2 years and then caught COVID. Who knows?
Yeah, but so when you started the studio, was it based upon what you've just mentioned then, like the set of principles, or was it just about wanting to do good, or was it just about wanting to work for yourself? Was it the freedom? Was it, you know, what was the contributing factors to that, and what was it based on, you know, the foundations for it?
Yeah, all of the above, but I've got a background as a bit of a social justice warrior, wanting to work with within culture, strategy, and on young people's programs in the past. I was a creative lead for something called The Inspired, which was a national youth charity, which went bust a few years back. But I'd travel down from Newcastle to London, work with their marketing teams, the developers, the programs teams, and work out what their, you know, the marketing should be. I did that for a few years. Before then, I'd worked for something called Culture Bridge, or the Culture Network, which worked to improve the cultural provision for children and young people from 0 to 25. And yeah, so I think it's just using that past, you know, my past art saved my life. So I think it's got this transformative effect for people and for businesses, for art and design. So we certainly need to transform things at the minute. So yeah, I think having values, that value package is kind of how we set up with both. We've set up our tagline is to design for social and commercial change, and I think the two should and can be linked. Capitalism maybe should be changed, the way we do business should be changed and linked to the planet, us, all of that. It's great there's more B Corp companies. That's becoming a cool thing. Companies see, those badges. Consumers are more likely to consume their products or feel like they're part of the good. I think, in a lot of ways we're heading in a really right direction, but it also feels like it's like there's a futile, we're doing all this work and there's just a tsunami coming. Maybe you've just caught me at a bad time where I'm feeling like, we need to shake things up. How do you feel about?
Yeah, well, I think I 100% agree, but I think, that comes, for me, I found that came with age and time within the industry to realise that a lot of the stuff that I was creating was just for corporate greed. But I wasn't able to question it because I worked for other people. It was only since I started going freelance or running my own business, I could direct managers into finding clients that complemented my stance on the world or social change. But finding those clients, that's really difficult, and it's I spoke to quite a lot of B Corps during this series, and the problem that they have is making that sustainable. So there's enough clients that have that same mentality where, when you mentioned about packaging, they will happily commit to that, even though it's 10 times the price of virgin plastic. There's that sort of very much that fine line, isn't there, between clients are there, majority of them are there to make profit, normally for stakeholders or shareholders, and that's when it gets quite murky, when you're sort of dealing with people that are focused solely on money, profit over people. That's quite a difficult sort of place to be in, because it is a business, aren't we? We need to make money to.
But at the same time, perpetual growth is impossible because it will exhaust the resource.
Yeah, and I think that's correct for most of us who sort of think quite clearly. When you're dealing with multi-millionaire fat cats that have got franchises to businesses that are hidden and shell companies in the Cayman Islands, they don't really see it like that. They just sort of see it as their time here is infinite and they want to have as much money as possible. And that's when you have to have those conversations with those clients and challenge their approach and their mentality to sort of try and break down the way that they sort of see the world.
Exactly, and that's part of our job, isn't it? I think every time you have a new client, there's a new opportunity to do that. I'm getting more people, businesses coming to me who are already like that, but it's more I remember having a chat with Wayne Hemingway, Red or Dead Hemingway Design, and he was saying that they got a call one day from McDonald's, can we work on a project together? And straight away he was like, no way. But then he realized there was an opportunity there to create the world's most sustainable uniform just because of the scale of McDonald's. So they said yes, and then they've created the world's most sustainable uniform. But then that's just one link in the whole armor of shite, isn't it? Of companies like that, who are just so big, so monolithic. It's impossible to turn those tankers quickly, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think that's fair play to set like Wayne and having that sort of strength to sort of stick to those convictions and get them to see it his way. Which is, we need more of that, don't we? You need more, people at the top or leaders or industry sort of icons, so to speak, that can help make it easier for everybody to sort of feel comfortable in that space and access that. And I think, like you say, I think if we look at creativity beyond just being a piece of design that's there to market something or advertise something, it's much more about the thought process behind it all, isn't it? And it's that's where it gets really interesting for me, is how we can have those conversations like this and then relay this, like learn from this and relay that to potential clients and sort of have a lot more confidence in what we say and how we say it. That's when I think we become a lot more clear, and clarity helps clients.
And it's really exciting as well, isn't it, from a commercial point of view for them, from a creative point of view for you, but also as part of your own practice, I think we should stand tall a bit more. You know, we do help change the world. I remember sitting in an arts talk in the creative industries a few years ago. So, you know, art before the pandemic. The art, you know, it's all very nice, but it doesn't really change the world, and that's why the government is maybe like looking at addressing the university courses and all this kind of stuff, and college funding and all this kind of stuff. I just thought that's utter bullshit. You know, without art or design, there's no way to properly re-envisage things, to show people the world. I think we're quite a simple animal in a way. You need to show other examples of us what it could be like, you know. So I think you need that, you know, with visionaries, and we make that change with clients. We're outside consultants, so we can have way trickier conversations than anybody internal, or maybe somebody who's brought you in because they know that that's your thing as a studio, so they want to work with you because of those reasons. Then, you know,
they quickly use creative people or creative businesses to envisage mass investment projects, and, you know, things that are ways to destroy the planet. Can't they reverse that and use it for, you know, for good purposes? But that's a different conversation.
And it's good. You know,
sorry, Stephen, do you finding clients to maintain your business since you started, has that been a difficult process, or is your background through social justice, has that helped you, sort of that network that you had pre-launch, have you been able to sort of just maybe just use that to help you sort of start?
Yeah, I think initially, so I was made redundant in a previous role, so I got a payout, and I had say like 3 or 4 grand, whatever it was, because I worked there for a good few years. And the only investment I had was to get a computer. So I'd got that. And then it was like, oh my God, I need to, you know, I've got kids, I've got a mortgage, I've got bills. I don't want to just work in the house all the time. So I need a studio or a building at some point. And all of the, you know, the reality hit me when I told my partner that, who has been really supportive, you know, she believed in me. She didn't say, don't do it. But when I told her that I was going to do it, you know, I just had to do it because I had to survive. So, and of course, the first few years in any startup or business it's the survival period. It's working out who you are and how you need to change, and then maybe change, you know. So I'm at that period now, but I've been very lucky to, I've only filled in 2 proposals for work, both of which were turned down. A bigger studio got them. So all my other work has just come in word of mouth, and it's by doing that thing of like just doing great work. Really, just try, even if it's, you know, if anybody's listening to this and they're first starting out, and somebody comes to you and they've got a budget of 500 quid, just do the best possible work. Do 5 grand's worth of work for it. Whatever you need to do, just chuck everything at it, because if it's good, everything else will look after itself. Somebody will see it, they'll recommend to somebody else. And so we've grown organically and slowly like that. And that's been great for now, for our journey from nothing to nearly 2 years in a pandemic when people don't want to spend money. And I thought it was mad. I remember I had some key milestones for the first 3 years. And in year 3, it was I don't know where I got this figure, but it was like get a 10 grand branding project, which will only take 1 month, right? So okay, great. That came in year 1, and I was like, oh my God, how's this happened? And I think that the trust that people put, what I was falling off my chair when I went in for the meeting with the CEO of this global company. Saying really like, you know, the vibe, your copywriting on the website. We really like the work that you've got there. I had no work, and I didn't want to put a load of old freelance work that I'd done through the years up. So I'd kind of, I just had a few pieces. And it kind of grew like that. But the trust that they put in you to create a brand for their business, it's massive, you know, and you don't want to let them down. You want to do your best job and make sure they're consulted properly. You've done your research properly. You've checked out the market, and you know that your craft needs to be really good. So one thing led to another with them. rebranded another area of their company. And well, the group, it's called N21 Group. They're a marketing, digital PR, and performance marketing company. They're in like all territories. So yeah, did the brand for North. That led to the brand for the rebrand of AGY into Ortus, and then to rebrand or give a brand for the first brand for the parent company that Neil had set up 18 years ago when the .com boom was absolutely flying, but had never had a brand for that. So that was nice it felt like I think sometimes it's a bit like you're a midwife, isn't it? You're kind of helping people give birth to their own ideas or images of their companies or themselves, and that's just one thing has led to another. From that, loads of different work in culture, for festivals, for people doing amazing work within the industry, like Pregnant and Then Screwed and Jolie, working on basically their cred decks to send to their clients and their layout design to make sure it's shit hot so that they can get some work. I can't really talk about any of that. And that's another thing that was new to me. I just came into this kind of blind, but the whole the NDA thing and how much you can share, and it's just really interesting, isn't it? Yeah, but I think my heart is in being, trying to be more experimental, using technology, and being, that kind of like post-discipline, combining music. So our next phase is to get around to sorting the website out, like I said at the start, which never happens because we keep getting busy. So protect some time in 2020. I'm going to say February to sort that out and how we communicate ourselves. And maybe put out our first newsletter. But just been really lucky to invest our first bit of investment in £10,000 into buying some new equipment, new kit, software, and to create a space in the studio where we can offer a space for other creatives who want to come in. But really, I need to contact more colleges, universities, and community organisations for people who haven't been to university or college, but fancy a go at becoming a kinetic typographer or getting into motion. And so that's the next phase for us. And for me, that's more exciting, to blend more with machine and really get into the render and content, as well as always going to have a love for static design, for branding work, for all of that kind of stuff. But I think there's a real I'm just so excited to jump in and to use that and to employ people, because the minute, like I said, it's just myself doing everything, which is not sustainable. My bandwidth is maxed out all the time. I've got 2 small kids who've got their own lives and things to do. So hopefully employing somebody in the next year or 2, maybe a business partner, and trying to make sure that OGRE Studio is investable. So that's the next plan, doing all working on the business rather than just knocking out projects,
Well, like we were saying before we came on live, it's a difficult thing to allocate time to, because the clients keep the place open, don't they, at the end of it. You mentioned a few things there, Stephen, which are really interesting. Is you going above and beyond? So the amount of studios that I've spoken to this, and even some of the biggest ones that are currently operating, when they first started, they had that exact same mentality. Irrelevant of the value of the project, it was about, this was an opportunity to showcase who they were, what they stood for, and how good they were. And then also that client there, N21, that were impressed by the copy on your site, and the tone of voice and what you stood for. Now that's something that's started to crop up a hell of a lot in these talks, and we've got a few copywriters that specifically work directly with agencies next year, because I think that's something that gets overlooked quite easy. Text becomes just quite repetitive, copy and paste sort of type mentality. But when you look at the brands that really sort of stand out, they do have a tone of voice that's been purposely designed. Is that something that you did with you guys on your site? Did you set out to have a certain approach, a certain type of language,
Yeah, I think
Natural.
I did. You know, I wasn't going to pretend that we're some massive slick agency. I think there's loads of really good slick agencies doing really solid but generic work out there. And so for me, I needed to express kind of like our personality, where we're coming from. I don't want to talk too much about the website because people are going to start looking at it. It needs fixing. But yeah, I think just having a bit of a, you know, a bit of a soul, being a bit different to other people. I mean, it's not War and Peace. It's just there's a few words up there. I remember listening to a podcast that Craig Oldham was talking on about Office of Craig, and I think they had at one point on their website there was just a page with like some Arnie sound bites you could click on, like it was like a calendar or a random Arnie generator, and that just became a talking point, you know. So the websites, unless you're the like of Pentagram, and I often find myself on the Pentagram website just clicking through and reading about the projects, because I think they just write about them in such a an easygoing way, like a normal way that anybody could understand, but still blowing your mind. So yeah, I think we're going to find our balance between the copywriting of, you know, we want to get better clients. I'm not sure if we put a lot of people off because of that, but all the clients that we've worked with and who've come to us so far have mentioned that, but we haven't had Nike knocking down the door or whatever yet. So
yeah, it takes a long time. It was
yeah.
I was speaking to Max, who is co-founder of Ragged Edge, and he was the first one that mentioned it earlier this year, the importance that they put on language and how much that really can shape. The visuals can be amazing. They've got a great design team. And I think we're all, you know, we can all create amazing looking stuff, but how that then communicates is a different story, isn't it? You can have great photography, great colours, great logos, typography, all these sorts of things. But if it doesn't say the right things, or if it doesn't communicate with the people it's intended to, it's pretty much void. You know, it's just noise, isn't it?
That's it. You know, you can get some sweet new threads, but then when you go down the pub, do people think you're a bit of a dick?
Yeah.
I mean, it's that sort of thing. It's like, how do you look? How do you talk? How do you sound? Who are you? It's the whole package, isn't it, of copyright and tone of voice, the visuals, your values, and how it all comes together. And yeah, I just think it's a really exciting space to work within. I think technology is going to unlock a lot of new work for our clients and across the sector, but it's also kind of homogenizing a lot of stuff. I think that, you know, because it's easier than ever to pick up a powerful laptop with, you know, Creative Cloud, or, you know, there's tutorials, there's Instagram, how things look. And you get art students and design students coming out of colleges and universities, and the work kind of has a certain look, you know what I mean, of the time. I think hopefully people grow out of that, and then they discover who they actually are, and then, you know, what they can do for their clients, if you like.
And I wanted to talk to you, Steve, about the Creative Boom article that you got featured in for the work that you've done recently. You just tell us how that came about, because obviously that's a huge platform, you know, a huge amount of followers, huge readership. Obviously, getting exposure in something like that, similar to, you know, and It's Nice That or Creative Review, Design Week, is always a great boost for the ego, and, you know, just to sort of validate maybe what you're doing, but also just from an exposure perspective, and being for the rest of the design community to sort of understand who's out there. That must have been a great, you know, moment.
Yeah, it was, because I'd listened to the podcast forever, and during lockdown, and when I was trying to work out who we were, you know, I thought a good starting point was to listen to who a lot of other people are and how they articulate themselves. And then, but again, that came from had a small budget for a small but brilliant community organization called Gateway Studio, who run out of an ancient church, grade 2 listed church in Gateshead, that's about to be done up in a very sympathetic way, obviously, because it's grade listed, and they do lots of work around diversity, bringing in people from all kinds of backgrounds from a young age, and to really push. They've got links with Phoenix Dance, Black Arts, and there's loads of creatives of colour doing lots of cool multidisciplinary work out of there. It's a big safe space for everybody. And my kids would go there for dance classes, so they came to me to say, "Oh, can you redo the website a little bit?" I was like, "Yeah, but I'll also redo you a brand." And it was mainly a favour, to be honest. That work, they had a very small budget, but it was enough for me to sit down and do. It's that thing of like just trying really hard for organisations that you really believe in and that you love. I think comes across. You wouldn't work with a client that you hated, no matter how big their budget was. And if you love them, I think the work is just so much more easier. And so that's, went for loads of meetings. What struck me about going into that building was the light coming through the stained glass window, and dance being the colour of life. The previous tagline was a bit like live, laugh, love, and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, well, maybe we can use that. I mean, I don't like it. It was live, life, dance, but we could kind of like evolve it a bit more, because they were doing great work, but they just, they weren't from our field, our background. They weren't communicating themselves kind of to the level of which they are choreographers and tutors and people providing an amazing space. So anyway, did that and forgot about it. They were all happy. The board was happy. And then just got an email from Katie Cowan one day just saying, "Really love this work, seen it on Twitter, can we share it?" And I was working from home at the time again. And I think us, we're siloed, we're in our studios, we're always heads down, just working on to the next thing, looking back. And then all of a sudden you get a pat on the head, and it was lovely, and I'd seen a few new inquiries coming in. But it's just nice it's that thing of just do good work, and then everything else will follow. That, is a truism. It sounds cliched, but it is totally true.
Yeah, I think there's also a need for us to take more step back. Again, it's just some of this terminology is just used so flippantly in social media, especially, that it becomes a little bit valueless. But I also think sort of stepping back and appreciating what you've done yourself. You only 2 years into your journey, and this applies to everybody, people tuning in, people that aren't. The idea that we should be maybe celebrating our own achievements more. I posted something on LinkedIn this week about should designers be more cocky, and it was probably the wrong terminology to use and the wrong phrase, but this idea that we do really help, when given the opportunity, can really change things and really make things better, and we should be a bit more applauded to that, as opposed to just being ciphered off into the world and never being seen again. And something like Creative Boom and those sorts of publications, blogs and magazines, I think they offer an invaluable way of doing that for other people, other creatives, to appreciate what work is going on within our industry. I think that's a real sort of nice. Yeah,
no, I think that's the ego in us, isn't it? Just really loving the attention. And of course, if you were sat there and you thought you were creating amazing work and nobody was patting you on the head, then that doesn't matter either. If you're totally into what you're doing, just go for it. It's not a game of fame. But yeah, totally. It just gives you, especially when it's just you working mad hours, running around like an idiot, getting everything sorted, and then also trying to, build a community, be part of a community, be present, address your white privilege, all this kind of stuff. It's just nice, it's been really good, but don't count on it. You've got to believe in yourself first, because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will.
Yeah, but those moments don't come around too often, do they? Last week, Craig Black was on it as Glasgow graphic artist. He is now more sort of pivoted from being a typographer designer. But during that sort of session, he broke down in tears, because he got to work with Rangers Football Club, which is his boyhood club. His family has supported him. He got asked to do all the typography for the new brand refresh. But he says that was the pin. He couldn't go any further than that as a typographer. That was it. But that validated the board of that football club, which might mean nothing to anybody else. that validated his 7-year journey as a business owner, working, doing £50 logos for the local butchers. That validated, and they give him the opportunity to then pivot to do something different. So he still works in creative arts. Most people will know him now for the Fusion series that he does with the footballs, and it's the live experiences, which look incredible. But it's just that was that moment of like saying, well done, you've done something amazing there. You know, you deserve this. You've worked damn hard for it. Appreciate it, and then move on. You know, and sort of, you know, the ego doesn't have to always be, you know, that bully at school sort of type mentality where it's about being the hardest or the biggest or the strongest or that. It can just be about sort of saying, you know, I've got a place here as a creative in this industry. I deserve to be here, and that was recognition for that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it should fill up your tank, but not spill over. You know, I think it's a good analogy of that, and turn you into a horrible wretch.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you know, we've done loads of work, but that was a really lovely moment. But I remember the first moment that I had was when I'd finished uni, and I tried to set up an illustration studio before I had kids and started doing a lot of work with music industry, and managed to. I was in a band at the time, and we supported a band called the Subways at the Academy in Newcastle. And I said to them, I thought their posters were a bit naff, and I said, do you know what? Can I design you a poster for free, and you can see, you know, see what you think? I went, yeah, go on then. And then I did, and loved it. Put it on sale. It like sold out everywhere, you know. So it was like great. And it's that analogy of just doing really good work. One thing leads to another, and then ended up designing my first stage background, which the band used at their, you know, their Glastonbury big stage performance. And I've got. Because it was in 2008, so people just had potatoes to record social events on. They don't have iPhones or anything like that now. So I've got a video which is so blurry, but there's like hundreds of thousands of people dancing around, getting merry, being hedonistic. And there's my work in the background. That was my first moment of being, oh my God, you know, I've created this in my bedroom, but it's out there in the world. And it just blew my socks off, you know. It's kind of like, wow, okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, but that's also a prime example of taking your chances that when they come around, you know, making the most of an opportunity. That was, you know, just being cheeky, asking a question, inquisitive, curious, whatever you might want to call it. And
especially when you're younger, because I remember at the time, I was an artist when I did that work, but I was a sandwich artist at a small cafe. And that was actually my job title. I thought it was so patronizing. Yeah, I just had to like work through the night to get that work done, you know. So that was yeah, you just have to do that sometimes.
In the moment, though, you know, they were pretty big, weren't they? I remember them touring.
Yeah. But it's like those passion projects. So another one recently, it was brilliant. In our studios in Newcastle, there are various other amazing designers and hairdressers, things like this. And there's a graphic artist and film director called Jimmy Terrell, who just done recently done the work for Beck on the Colours album, and the video for that as well. And he'd seen that I'd moved in. I was bringing all my equipment in and things like that. I said hello in the corridor, and he grabbed me one day and said, do you do like lyric video stuff? Do you do motion? I was like, yeah. You know, we've done like, you know, kinetic logos and branding for clients. I can work typography if it's a lyric video. And that was my understanding. I was just going to be in charge of typography over this David Holmes track. He's coming back. David Holmes, an Irish guy, been around for ages, big producer in the 90s, spent a lot of time become a soundtrack artist, choreographer, composer, yeah. And, you know, working on like Killing Eve and Ocean's 11, big blockbusters and things like that. But he's making music again, and it's absolutely brilliant. On Heavenly Records. Anyway, Jimmy was like, can you do this? It's like, yes, I can help out. When's the deadline? And he said, right, well, next Tuesday. We had to make a music video in a couple of days, but he works. He's a really, really good guy to work with. He's also got a dodgy accent like me, like proper Tyneside northeastern guy. But he creates like Riso prints, screen prints, photocopiers. He did a tour of like the worst around Newcastle of the libraries which had the worst photocopiers, and then went up to them and said, can I buy your photocopier for like a couple £100 to get the right sort of grain and effect and stuff like that. And he came down on day one when we were putting this video together, with a lot of like the content with the storytelling and narrative of the music video. It's called Hope is the Last Thing to Die, which is kind of, you know, saying COVID and politics and the world, but it's you know, you need to have a bit of hope as well. But I felt like a librarian because he had just like, you know, feet depth of all this work that he'd created, and we needed to, you know, to turn into a music video. Anyway, we managed to pull it off, but we were waiting for, it's that thing of like, always trying your best, you know, and if even if you think you can kind of do something, just do it anyway. Just say yeah, because you can do it. But there was a point where he was working with two animators, one from New York and I think one from Spain. They returned the work, but it wasn't as he'd requested. You know, there's been maybe an interpretation thing going on there. And he just looked at me, is that right? Can you learn how to animate all this stuff and like create all this visual effects? I was like, I'm a good Googler. And anyway, we created it, and really good video, even if I do say so myself, but it was actually nominated. This is the thing that I kind of forgot about it, got on with the next bit of work, but it was nominated by the London International Animation Festival as one of the top 20 videos on the planet. So again, blew my socks off. He was double nominated for one that he'd done for Elvis, you know, Dead, you know, an old track, not a new one. So anyway, it's just that thing of like you say, taking up those opportunities. Everything's terrifying. You know, if something's really good and juicy, it should, you know, it should be making you feel a bit funny. And somebody was talking to me about imposter syndrome and self-belief, but I think I just said, you know, if you haven't got imposter syndrome, if you haven't got, you know, those worries of those crises of confidence, I think you're not really trying hard enough, you know. Yeah. Maybe comfort zone, and should always be trying new things. There's a balance with that, isn't there? You know, creativity, it's a very messy thing. It's a funny process, especially when you're working across multiple disciplines, formats, all that kind of stuff. So it's scary as well, and you might mess up. But
I'm a big believer, if you lose that nervous excitement and nervous energy because you don't really know what you're doing, or you're sort of a little bit sort of scared of it, or, you know, like I say, excited. So as soon as that goes, just stop doing it, because it's sort of the buzz isn't there, the adrenaline doesn't, you know, and the idea that you're creating a music video in 2 days doing something you've never done before, the nerve as well as the excitement must have been like 50-50. But if you didn't have that, probably would have just been a bit like, oh, it's going through the motions again. And what's the point of that? Because creativity should be, I think, you know, foremost, just an amazingly good, exciting, fun thing to do, whether you're doing it for clients for money or whether you're doing it for self-initiated projects. If it's just there going through the motions, then I'd just give up, personally. Yeah,
no, I do totally agree. And I think, well, we need to survive, you know. Sometimes you don't publish work that you've done because you've just taken it for the money. And it's not necessarily the most exciting thing, you know, you need to keep the lights on, etc. But I've definitely, in the last couple of months, just been overrun with projects that weren't pushing me massively. So just gone off and set up some self-directed projects, one with another designer and like a mining museum and something else. You just have a go. Yeah, like you say, you know, that I think self-direct, especially I'm from a fine art, contemporary art background, conceptual artist. I get bored very easily. So I think, you know, that's just me. Everybody's different. Yeah, I just wondered if are there any, do you get questions from anybody listening?
Sometimes, yeah, it depends if people want to, or if they've got you know, are confident enough or comfortable enough. So please feel free to ask away if anybody's got anything. But in the meantime, where would be the best place to find the studio, Stephen, online? And you know,
on Instagram, it's OGRE. Oh, what is it? OGRE.studio, I think. Let me just check. It's OGRE _ studio. Just search OGRE Studio, and you'll be able to find us there.
So I should know better than you because I've been tagging you that much. So it's I know more than my own. But yeah, well, you're on LinkedIn as well, haven't you? And all the other.
I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm really open for any students, any other creatives from whatever background, if they want to work together or chat about anything, to do so. I'm not scary.
We've talked on things like LinkedIn before, haven't we, about issues such as, from a underprivileged background or a non-creative background, right through to different ways into the education, and also barriers that people face. So, it is a predominantly male-dominated industry of a certain class system as well. So we've spoken about that, and I've spoken publicly about those issues as well, about not having that traditional way in. So it's always quite a good place to be, isn't it? I find LinkedIn as a way of just being able to participate in conversations and debates about these sort of issues.
Definitely, and it's crackers as well. I think it might have been a report by the Creative Industries Federation. It might be. We could add it to the the links, whatever. Yeah. But in 2020, there was a sector-wide report done. It's still only 16% of working class people working in the creative industries. So that means that obviously non-working class people are more likely to be a boss and in charge of everything that goes on screen, print, stage, all that kind of stuff. But add to that being working class and female, working class and a person of colour, working class and disabled, it'll go down and down and down. So I think it's really important, and that's when we're looking at collaborating with people, when we're looking for freelancers to join our books, or people just to work on a project, a self-identified project. We'd encourage everybody to jump on. Obviously, you can't help how you're born either. So if that's not you, that's also fine. I'm not having a go at people just because of how they were born, but I think if you've got a certain amount of privilege, you should do something about it, and that's why we're I've not made it, if you like. It's an ongoing process, but that's why we're setting up that big innovation project next year to try and bring people into the studio, share skills, get them used to working on things, and then touch wood, they might be employed one day by other people.
Yeah, when I was sort of working for other people, I was blinkered into what was surrounding the industry as a whole, because it was just so self-centered on what I was doing. But since starting Right Line, it's amazing when you start to scratch the surface, the people that you can find that there's a lot of people doing really good work, and from the surface, it is very much like we've just said, dominated by a certain type of people. But when like I say, if you take the time to look for it, you can find some incredible people. I've had some brilliant female creative directors, people of colour, people of freelance, people that are doing different things, that have different takes on it, all sorts of minorities. Trying to give people the equal opportunities is really commendable for you to sort of want to do that and work with those people. So they're definitely out there. It just takes a lot more searching for, and it takes a bit more time to sort of dedicate to wanting to connect with them.
Exactly, and there's lots of stuff happening up here. So if you want to check out any like Sister Shack, Tell Irby, Curious Festival, that's all happening up in Newcastle. There's lots of really good stuff happening for making that stuff more. There's loads more of it. Yeah. Than ever. So you just have to get involved. So I just think if you're in a position to lead a conversation, to lead a client, to lead a piece of work, or to make a connection with that, I think you've got a duty to do so. Give back to your community and all that stuff. If you're talking to somebody like you say who's got accounts in the Cayman Islands, or a CEO of a global company, and they're being a twat, maybe just tell them they're a twat. Just get in there, tell them they're a twat, and then
quickly.
Yeah, no, get a meeting with them and tell them to the face, and then walk out. That's what I'd do. You shove them money up their ass.
That sounds like the perfect place to end it on that anarchist sort of note. But it's been a real privilege, Stephen. I appreciate your time. It's great to hear more about, go past the work like we always intend to do, more about the story of the people behind it, and where they've come from and where they're at and where they're going is really important, I think, for other people to hear. So it's been a pleasure. So like I say, it's the last one of the year. I hope you and everybody and your family have a great Christmas. Everybody that's tuned in, we'll be back on January the 14th, and we've got at least 3 a week in the new year, stupidly. So I'll be looking more tired than ever before. But it's please keep in touch, and we'll have to do some more stuff in 2022.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. This is the rude bit where we have to end it for everybody in a typical Zoom way, but it's been a pleasure, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Take care, mate. Thank you.